Welcome back, YouTube. This installation is obviously titled Clay. Now, that title refers to the character in the movie series Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. At the beginning of the movie, many of you that have seen that movie, the high school student that drove the Dodge Viper, when he was challenged to a race with his girlfriend being the prize, they basically picked on the kid that was actually in the auto shop turning on the wrenches and building his own car. Now, the kid with the Viper, the rich spoiled kid, his name was Clay, and he rattled off some of the statistics pertaining to his Dodge Viper. And the response was, "Congratulations, you could read the brochure." Folks, 90% of the performance industry and YouTube channels that you are tuning into, approximately 3% of them know what they're talking about. Okay? This goes for everybody that has commented on my previous videos. Referring back to the 90% that, okay, the Kamala syndrome, I'm going to call it, that Clay, you believe whatever you want. Now, let's make very clear, the advertised horsepower and torque ratings that the manufacturers list on the brochure, those are factory estimated numbers to please insurance companies. Okay? You talked again, anybody that's been in the industry for more than 50 to even 60 years. Let's go back to 1960s power production and statistics. In approximately the early 70s, insurance companies were coming down because of the oil embargo, so on and so forth, and the ratings that the horsepower ratings that all of our automobiles had. So even in NASCAR, okay, they listed on the hood 425 cubic inch. Or previously, they actually listed the horsepower rating on the hood. So instead of being 426 cubic inch like the Hemi, they'd say, oh, they're 425 horsepower. For any of you that have ever had the chance to sit behind a race-built 426 Hemi, did they make more than 425 horsepower? Okay, going back, you're not going to find an authority that can tell you how much horsepower the 429 Boss Hemi got, even in the Mustang. And in the early 1970s, they changed the standards of horsepower ratings. So what you're seeing now within all the different dyno sessions, it's the calibration on the new standard. So previously I created a video with the 1992 Cadillac DeVille. That 4.9 liter is the grandfather to a pushrod engine that came all the way back from 1982, the 4.1. Went 4.1, 4.5, and then 4.9. And yes, the Cadillac engines, they had some factory issues, whether that would be head stud bolts to head gasket failures to intake bolt failures. They had some troublesome areas. Now, Cadillac, known for their higher end quality because of the badging. How many vehicles from General Motors were equipped with the exact same engines, but were badged something different? Even today, some of your Buick vehicles that are still being sold, like in your SUV families, are they the exact same engine that are in the Chevrolet or the GM variation? There's always battles going on between the manufacturers saying when things came out first, when they were prototyping something. For those of you that missed that portion of the video, the intent of the example was that the 4.9 liter Cadillac engine in the 1992 was the predecessor to the Ford 4.6 liter. If you go back to the mid-1980s, there was that battle going around that 5 liter size V8 engine. Look at all the manufacturers. They went from the Ford 5.0, which just a year previous to that, 1984, they listed it as a 5.0 high output. A few years before that, they listed it as cubic inch, 302. That was the change of where we're starting to get some of the components. So even the bolts and hardware that you had on the automobiles, They weren't necessarily going in the American Standard wrenches, they were converting to metric. So even some of the numbers that were coming out of the factory were altered with that same thing, including horsepower and torque multiplication. So we've seen the change from the 1960s into the 1970s, and once again we've seen components of the engines and changing from cubic inch American Standard to metric sizes was all involved with that. There was something lost within those years when factories were looking at the tolerances, the factory tolerances of how they're rating horsepower. That is something that's also being depicted in dyno sessions today. So again, folks, you don't have to take my word for it. History proves it. You don't have to take my word for it. Now, another thing a commenter had made, we're going to get into a lot of drama in this video, okay, folks? For those of you, I've mentioned Uncle Tony's Garage multiple different times on this channel. I actually have to thank Tony. Years ago, Tony mentioned me 2 different times in some of his previous episodes. It brought a lot of viewers to this channel, okay? That is how I'm able to even create these videos, okay? I appreciate Tony DeFaro for mentioning those things. Now, since that point, any comments that I leave on his channel, he's blocked me out because I've created some drama, causing the viewers to do their own thinking. Think for yourselves. Do not go to Google or any YouTube channel and take everything they say as being the ultimate authority in the truth. If you are turning to Google or YouTube to get your information, your phones are smarter than you. The smartphones are smarter than you because you can look up Google. You are not going by historical facts that have stood the test of time. So in a previous video, I had a couple different channels, fairly large channels, close to 50,000 individuals from one, claiming that our diesel fuels don't freeze and the freezing temperature of gasoline isn't as low or even lower than what I stated in a previous video, saying that at approximately 10 below 0 Fahrenheit, fuel starts to gel up if it sits. And at approximately 30 below, your fuel lines can freeze. So if your vehicle is equipped with aluminum 3/8 fuel line and you are using a high density fuel, okay, most are, with any ethanol added to it, the ethanol actually is helping lower the freezing point. But if you're using the non-ethanol gasoline, such as like 91, 93 octane, top tier fuel, okay, your fuel lines can freeze. What keeps fuel from freezing is its movement. So whether it's gasoline for an automobile to diesel for trucks, at approximately 30 below is when the condensation within the fuel, if it is sat, can actually freeze within the lines. Now, that freeze doesn't mean that the liquid actually turns to a solid, such as water, okay? It means that your fuel lines will froze to the point where the fuel will not flow through them. So in a diesel application, the wax will separate and crystallize within the lines, blocking the flow of the liquid fluid in the diesels. In the previous video, I also mentioned the difference between the 2 different grades of diesel fuel. The higher octane, which is approximately 15% more efficient than gasoline, is actually illegal in some states for the truckers to use. Even on farms that are running John Deere tractors, let's say they're cutting corn in Iowa, okay, they are able to run those higher efficient fuels, more fuel per hour, okay? It's not miles because some of those combines or tractors might only be moving 2 miles an hour. They're running continuously at a higher RPM where the flow of the fuel is at a high rate of speed. Now in diesel applications, obviously the pressure of the fuel delivery system is increased, even to the point where it's 3 times more than modern day fuel injected cars. So the information shared in the previous video was more towards the individuals that are working with hot rods. Those that have a siphon straw system, non-pressurized fuel tank system, whether it be electronic or mechanical fuel injection pump, or excuse me, fuel pump, you're going to see pressures anywhere from that 2 to approximately 10 psi. The newer vehicles, you're looking at 120 psi. So look at the boiling points and the freezing points of the different fuels that we are using. When they are pressurized, they lower. So you can actually take water and do this on your own. If you pressurize water to approximately 120 psi, water will freeze at lower than 32 degrees Celsius. Okay? Same with diesels. When diesels are extracting the fuel out of their gas tanks, that vacuum that's pulling the fuel out of the tank through the lines keeps it moving. But once it gets into the injectors or the actual pump itself, the pressure increases dramatically to the point where at the injector itself could see over 200 psi. Now, realizing that, the temperatures of whether it freezes or boil changes. So for heat soak, carbureted vehicles that are operating in that 5 to 7 psi, the fuel is moving fairly slow. So it is going to have more time to absorb that heat. It's also going to have time that once it reaches the bowls of the carburetor, it's going to be a larger amount. Okay, so if you take a popsicle in your home, say your kid's popsicle dish, the smaller the popsicle diameter or size is, the sooner it will freeze. Where if it's a larger amount, it takes more time to freeze, right? So as fuel is delivered into a carburetor, it's going from a smaller circumference within the fuel delivery line, say 3/8 fuel lines, depending on what that's made out of, to a larger bowl within the carburetor. So what point within an automobile that has a rear-mounted gas tank to the engine, the power plant, will fuel actually freeze at a higher temperature? Okay, even though below zero, at a higher temperature. At approximately 10 degrees below zero, if your vehicle's sitting for more than, say, 2 or 3 days, your fuel can freeze. If you are starting on a daily basis, say it's your daily driver going to work once or twice during, different routes during the day, even at approximately 30 below zero, your fuel can freeze inside the fuel lines. More modern day vehicles, fuel injected vehicles that have a larger area of pressurized fuel, it can freeze at even smaller circumferences because it is at a higher pressure. So the temperatures that I shared in the previous video of when fuel would actually freeze, it is determined on the application. Fuel injected vehicles are going to have a lower, below zero freezing point where the fuel can freeze within the fuel logs of the fuel injection system. But these smaller orifices in the injectors, it can actually freeze there. For any of you that ever had a fuel injector failure, where the body of the actual fuel injector cracks, it's because the fuel froze inside the injector while the rest of the fuel delivery system, being a larger mass and larger volume, hasn't yet. Okay? It also is determined where the fuel lines are run. If the fuel lines are run to the point where the snow, especially in the snowbelt region, the snow is thrown up underneath the chassis of the car, say along the unibody, that snow is coating your fuel delivery lines. It is putting the condensation directly against the wall of the fuel delivery lines. So the amount of ethanol, alcohol that's in your fuel gasoline will actually act as a magnet and draw that moisture into the fuel system. So the advantage to running a non-ethanol added fuel is because it will not be as strong of a magnet extracting the condensation in. So that's why in the previous video, when I said you guys are running alcohol, you know how sensitive alcohol is. Even leaded fuels, racing fuels, if your drum is over 3 months old, the octane level drops because there's more water content within the fuel, lowering the octane. Okay, same thing happens in your daily driver. If you fill up your tank of 20 gallons and you only use that fuel within a month, you're going to be fine. But if you have a hot rod that you are storing over the winter months, Whatever fuel you have in your gas tank, within that 6 months of the winter season, the fuel starts to gel up, no matter where it is within your fuel delivery system, whether it's in the gas tank, your fuel lines, to your fuel filters, to the carburetor. Even though the gasoline might evaporate, it is leaving the solids, the contaminants of the fuel at the bottom of your fuel bowls. Where are most of your jets or your idle mixture ports located within a carburetor? They're at the bottom body of a carburetor. So within a winter months, if you do not drain your fuel system, it could freeze, obviously, and expand, cracking the fuel delivery components. It'll also leave behind a gel. So even you small engine builders, whether it be snowblower, chainsaws, you realize if you do not drain the fuel out of it, it's going to clog. Simple as that. The sediments within the fuel, the gel type contaminants, will settle to the bottom. So even though you go out and pump your carburetor and you put some fresh fuel in it, being a cleaner, it takes time to penetrate it, and at some points it doesn't even work. You actually have to physically take the components apart and clean them by hand. So again, I don't like to necessarily respond to the naysayers. That's why over 1,000 videos have been removed from this channel. Now let's get into the drama of this video. Okay, for those of you that stuck around this long, one of the previous commenters on a video had mentioned that they stopped watching Uncle Tony's Garage because of something that happened 5 years ago between Tony DeFaro and a guest, a friend that he had on the shows, Lamb Chop. Now, I don't recall everything that had happened at that point, but it was something about where Lamb Chop was allowed to get into one of Tony's cars at the drag strip, and he was unable to even drop the clutch to do a burnout. And after that point, Lamb Chop was kind of exited from the show. Now, I don't know if they were personal friends, if they were just run-ins, but if you watched Uncle Tony's Garage for any point of time, you can look at his history of the last 5 years, whether it's individuals or projects he has worked on to the point where they haven't been finished. He has thrown somebody under the bus, or the projects he's working on have been complete failures. Okay? I could sit there and bash and not watch Uncle Tony's Garage because of all of that. You guys could watch his channel and say that I am completely wrong on everything I'm saying, so you're not going to tune in. But have you learned anything within the videos to the point where it makes you question things? Are you a free thinker, or do you fall into the masses, the 97% of our population that just goes by whatever Google tells you? Because I can guarantee any of you, even these larger channels that have 50,000 or even 1 million viewers, you know how to read the brochure. You're a clay. In previous videos, I've given this symbol. Okay? That's what that refers to as 3%ers. 3% of our population are free thinkers to the point where they can make up their minds by themselves. They don't need their smartphones or YouTube content creators to tell them exactly how things are. Even individuals that are turning to science, dyno machines, or flow benches, it doesn't tell you the whole story. One of the most recent postings by Eric Weingartner, okay, he's even admitted all the information that he's ever collected from some of the smartest individuals in the industry as far as porting heads. When you start equipping those cylinder heads on a running engine, on a dyno, it gives you a completely different perspective. The science does not hold up. What does not lie to you is history. We can go, once again, we go back to the 1960s when pure stock racing was going on. You know, those 426s, 427s, 428s were competing on a national stage. They were using technology that's nowhere close to what we're using today. And they were capable of running 9 and 10-second quarter miles. Okay? Even using the fuel, the leaded fuel of the pre-1970 fuel embargoes. So again, folks, just a little inside knowledge. There's a team in Australia, okay, approximately 3,000 individuals that work for Google. Whenever you guys Google up information, it is, maybe a team or an individual that is computing the calculations from a textbook or from historical, norms, and putting onto the translation, the AI, artificial intelligence, to when you type in Google, it's going to that information. Most of these individuals that are working for Google were not even born when carburetors existed. They weren't even born when leaded fuel was an everyday thing. So yes, you can say that, the Cadillac, 220 horsepower, it only made 245 pounds of torque. Those are factory insurance registration numbers. You put a Mustang of the same year, 92 Mustang, up against a 92 Cadillac, with a Mustang having more cubic inches and more high performance camshaft and components, against a Cadillac that weighs approximately 1,000 pounds more, 4 doors. The Cadillac will walk the Mustang stoplight to stoplight and even in the 8th mile. So does the advertised 320 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque of a 1992 Mustang, does that show that the numbers provided by Cadillac or by the brochure or by Google as being accurate? It's not. The ultimate teller of truth is the performance at the track. It's not a flow bench. It's not a dyno. It's what happens at the track, the final result of your work. So, again, let's create a little drama, because I don't want anybody to take this wrong. And I even don't want Tony DeFaro to take this wrong. I'm not walking to Uncle Tony's garage to take all the information he has and all these different projects to critique whether he's doing things right or wrong. Okay? I tune into Uncle Tony's garage because his automobile content, not motorcycles and all this other stuff, or his lives, I find it interesting. It's entertaining. And there are points of his content that I'm even learning from. Things that I think back and like, wait a minute, was that something that actually stood the test of time? Even though he's had multiple failures, I could have tuned off and left his channel even after he's banned me for leaving comments. Who cares? Who cares? Now let's mention some of the other individuals that have been affected on the Uncle Tony's Garage channel. Let's talk about the 3 young individuals that were donated all kinds of equipment, and Uncle Tony even gave them a vehicle to start building, first-time wrench turners, and they went and created their own, what was it, Daddy's Dirty Money or something like that. Those 3 individuals, instead of sitting at home typing and doing all that stuff, they're getting their hands dirty. How about the GTX Hemi project that was brought into Uncle Tony's Garage in his previous location? All the different issues that they found with the mast rebuild. Was that car ever finished and running to the point where the high-ranking military member drove that car out of Uncle Tony's Garage? Did anybody ever see that running? What about the Slant 6 with all the holes drilled in it? How many different things did Uncle Tony do with different spark plugs and fuel distribution, carburetor spacers, so on and so forth? And did the car ever actually do and meet the expectations that he was shooting for? No, but did you find it entertaining to the point where it made you question? Can you learn something from it? Even Uncle Tony's most recent project, okay? Because of the pattern that has been proven on Uncle Tony's Garage. This Slingshot Drakester, even working with Dr. Art, which Dr. Art is about the 10th or 12th individual that has sat down and partnered with Uncle Tony's Garage, that has ended up getting the shaft some way or the other, okay? This individual is spending tons of money to repurpose the Slingshot Drakesters, take it back to its original state, and to try to run it. I'm going to make a prediction right now. While we have learned something, okay, I didn't know anything about the technology of the fuel pumps within Drakesters. Okay, I didn't know that that's what determined the ultimate horsepower. Okay, I never ran that type of fuel. So what I can pick up on, the thing that is educating to me, if I question it, I go and look it up at more than just Google. Even though I don't think this Drakester will ever see the drake strip, okay, I don't think it'll ever be completed on the Uncle Tony's Garage channel, I watch for the content that I can learn from. And whether or not it's Tony's channel, his personality, okay, if you've done enough research, instead of just turning to Google, Uncle Tony DeFaro, did not even graduate high school. Okay, he left his former home because of all the trouble he got into. We're to the point where he lost his driver's license. You can judge the man by his history, or you can learn from the content that he has learned. Because he hasn't been right about everything. As a matter of fact, I have an example that I am going to share with you. The most accurate depiction of what I think Uncle Tony or Tony DeFaro actually is on YouTube. I'll be right back. Now, as a mechanic, there is not a single one of you out there that has not used this product. The name literally comes from how many attempts the manufacturer took getting it wrong before they got it right. 40 wrong times that they try to come up with a formula to make WD-40 before they had a successful product. 39 times completely wrong. Uncle Tony's Garage might have been wrong 39 times. But it's that one time, the 40th time of the information he's sharing, that you can learn something from. Now, folks, I'm taking this from other experience. I'm going to close the video out with this. You obviously see that I'm wearing baseball hat, shirt, so on and so forth. I'm also a coach for very young individuals. And some of them that get very competitive. You know, if they lose a game, they walk out of the diamond with their head down and like, oh yeah, we just got beat. Baseball is a game of failures. But how many of you have grown up for the love of the game? Whether it's a favorite player, something that happened memorable within history. I think everybody knows who Babe Ruth is. How many of you realize that baseball is a game of failure? That usually 7 out of 10 times you're going to fail at what you're trying to do. An all-star, somebody that's a Golden Glover, you know, going to all-star games, somebody that goes down in history as a legend. They're successful, 3 out of the 10 times. Batting averages of 300 or more. Do you criticize the ball players that might only hit a 250 batting average but have gotten 40 home runs for the year, that have taken their team to, say, the World Series? If you have a local baseball club near you, do you help support them? Okay? Even though they're failures 7% of the time? Or do you learn and enjoy it for the entertainment value that it provides? That's what YouTube is. YouTube is an entertainment source. It is not a location to go and get your facts. So some of you can turn, add into the comments that I've been completely wrong about everything. Are you taking the free will to go and look up the research yourself and go beyond what Google's telling you? Clay. Because 7 out of 10 of you, your phone is smarter than you. You turn to Google, your smartphone, you turn to artificial intelligence to tell you the correct answer instead of looking at historical proof. Folks, that is one of the problems in our entire society. Whether it's in the automobile performance markets, excuse me, to anything that you might do on a daily basis. Even if you have been doing something within your career for 40-something years and you're starting to get close to retirement, you have learned your profession based off of your circumstances and your experience. That does not make that experience go above anybody else's. In today's world, you have to question everything. Follow the money in most cases. Do your research. Find out who the manufacturer is. And when it comes to top-tier gasoline, again, I had an individual call me out and saying, there's fuel additive packages added to the fuel that the fleet of trucks that pick up the fuel and deliver it to the gas stations own those fleet. Yes, they do. Whether it's a Quick Trip truck, a Shell truck, a Mobil truck, a Holiday gas station truck, Phillips 66, when they go get fuel at the fuel depot, or even the automotive trains that are pulling into the depot that are refueling, they're getting their diesel and their gasoline from the exact same, well, obviously diesel and gasoline, but for the application, they're getting the fuel from the exact same place. And not one of the gas stations, when the fuel is then pumped into their holding tanks, goes out and adds a bottle of their own conditioners or additives. It does not happen. There's basically 2 grades of fuel. And it's within the mix of those 2 grades that determines the mid-grade. And there's no such thing as high additive packages in a gasoline, especially in the state of Wisconsin, because our authorities, our government, regulate all gas stations to the exact same quality. Now, somebody out in Pennsylvania mentioned, and even another commenter, this other big channel, saying that Quick Trip has been the cheapest gasoline in the region. I feel sorry for you folks, because in the Great Lakes region, Quick Trip is actually the highest priced fuel. So the truck that just picked up fuel from the depot, supplying it to Quick Trip, you're paying right now $3.99 a gallon. You can literally drive 2 blocks away to the local Mobil gas station where the exact same truck from Quick Trip is also delivering fuel, and you're paying $3.64 a gallon. And if you're a members award, you can even get up to 15 cents knocked off of your gallon of fuel at the cheaper gas station. So as I've stated to the individuals of Pennsylvania, they're just getting a brand new Quick Trip built in their community. I feel sorry for you, because that means that most of your gas stations are already overpriced. If Quick Trip gas is the cheapest in your region, your other gas stations are giving you the shaft. As a matter of fact, most of them are, because they're not guaranteeing to give you any different fuel no matter what gas station you go to. It is the condition and the age of the actual gas station itself and its holding tanks that are below ground. The fuel is the same. If I need to go to the extent of driving you 12 miles away, go to a local depot, watch the fuel from the dispenser going into the trucks, follow a truck to a gas station and back because they do multiple trips per day, and show you that at no point anywhere within that delivery is there any additives added to the gasoline. It doesn't happen. The contracts for the fuel trucks get prioritized by who has the most amount of fuel being consumed out of the tankers. So Quick Trip, being one of the largest chains in the Great Lakes region, they get priority over the other fuels. Means they get to pick up earlier in the morning because there's more locations to supply. And as the numbers decrease within the locations, whether it be a Shell, Phillips 66, or the casino gets one truck per day. They're going to be the last ones filled up in the morning and the last ones delivering during the day. That's how it works, folks. There's no magic voodoo behind this. There's no magic voodoo in top-tier gasoline. It's a myth. So again, without Tony DeFaro getting me for defamation or Uncle Tony's Garage, whatever, I appreciate it. I tune into his channel for the education point. I've seen multiple individuals connected to Tony DeFaro, going all the way back to Lamb Chop, that have gotten new channels, so on and so forth, that are doing the exact same thing to other people. That's why I did not compete in one of the combined efforts of the YouTube content creators, the 500. They're all taking advantage of people. They're only going by what AI is telling them. See you later, Clay.